They banned me from my sister's wedding after I paid everything. It still amazes me how calm I was when that message came through. 3 months of planning, 6 figures of my own money spent. I covered everything. The venue deposit, the catering upgrade, my sister's dress that she couldn't afford, even my parents' outfits. I did it because I believed family came first. Then, 2 nights before the wedding, out of nowhere, that text. We've decided it's better if you don't attend. No explanation. No apology. Just a live stream link. I stared at the screen for a full minute, coffee going cold. Then I typed back, "All right. Hope it turns out unforgettable," and booked the next flight to the Maldives. What I didn't know then was how unforgettable it really would be, just not in the way anyone expected. When the wedding day arrived, I wasn't watching the live stream. I was lying under the sun, a drink in hand, and by then, the damage had already started. I sat there, phone in hand, the screen burning cold into my palm. The message from my parents was short. Too short. "We've decided you're not welcome at the wedding." That was it. No explanation, no "we love you" but just the cold, brutal exclusion after everything I'd done. I reread that message 5 times, waiting for the part that said, "just kidding." It never came. I scrolled back through our texts, looking for any hint, anything to tell me how it came to this. I financed the whole damn thing. Every single detail was on me. The venue, the dress, the food. Saving up for years, scraping every extra dollar, just to make it right. To prove to them I could do this, that I was worthy, even if they never said it. And now this. Like I was a stranger they decided to erase. I could feel my chest tighten, like something was squeezing me from the inside. Not pain exactly, more disbelief. How did it get here? Was that quiet, chilly voice behind this all along? The one that said I'd never be good enough? But still, the message stung deeper than I expected. I felt anger start to rise, slow but steady, the kind that doesn't explode in noise but just burns under your skin. I sat back on the couch, eyes fixed on the ceiling but seeing only the message glowing in my mind. Maybe I looked stupid, but I started muttering under my breath. What the fuck? After everything. What? The words sounded childish, I know. But this was raw now, and it all felt unfair. I wondered if they even realized what they were doing. Or if it was just their way. Cutting me out so they could control the narrative, the guests, the image. I thought about calling my sister, the one who always seemed in the loop, the one they trusted. But I didn't, because she'd probably just tell me to shut up, or that I didn't understand their side. The more I replayed it in my head, the bitterness grew. I could almost hear their voices, distant and cold. "You're too much trouble," they'd say. Or worse, "You don't belong here." Something inside me shifted when I realized I wasn't scared anymore. I was eerily calm. Like my mind switched to a different gear of survival. The shock faded, replaced by this quiet, calculated space where I wasn't going to be the victim anymore. I typed out a reply. A few words, nothing too emotional, just got it. I didn't know if they expected me to beg, to cry, to explain myself. And I realized I wouldn't. Not this time. After all those years of trying to earn their approval, this felt like a door slamming so hard it shook the whole frame. But instead of running after it, I leaned back and let it stand. I locked my phone and stared out the window. The street was empty, the sky dull and gray. Part of me felt numb, but another part was already plotting how to turn this mess around. If they wanted to push me away, fine. But maybe they'd forgotten who I was, how much I'd endured, and how I could fight without them. "I'll show you," I whispered, not sure if I meant it to them or just to myself. The silence in the room stretched out, thick and complete. I thought that was the end. But when the evening crept in, the weight of their message kept pressing down, reminding me that nothing was over yet, not even close. I've been thinking a lot about how it turned out this way, about how I ended up being the one who always paid. Not just money, but time, energy, patience, and got nothing back but this heavy, almost invisible weight of guilt. It's like I was supposed to be grateful for that guilt, or maybe even earn it, like some kind of twisted payment for sticking around. My family never talked about feelings. Not the way other people do, at least. For us, love was transactional. You showed you cared by what you did and what you gave. But there were no checks and balances. I'd help out whenever someone needed something, cover bills when things got tight, but it was never enough. I learned quickly that when you keep giving, you start getting a different kind of response. Not thanks, no, An unspoken ledger that got heavier and heavier only on my side. I remember one time, years ago, helping my sister move into a new apartment. I took a whole weekend off work, rented a truck, carried boxes up 3 flights of stairs. When we finally finished, I was exhausted, but she barely looked at me. Instead, she complained we should have started earlier in the day, made little snide remarks about how I wasn't exactly doing a marathon. The thanks came later, though, not out loud, but in a bitter, "I guess you're the only one who cares." Like guilt was the price for my effort. I always paid. My parents needed money after my dad lost his job. I was there. My brother got into trouble with the car. I bailed him out. College tuition for my nieces? Paid in full, before I thought about how I could afford rent. I didn't keep exact numbers or receipts, but I could feel the weight of all those invisible debts, like an anchor tied around my neck. And in return, it was blame. Tiny accusations that built up over the years. You never visit enough. You don't call. You don't care as much as you should. And when I tried to push back, remind them I was doing a lot, it was like I was just making excuses. The message was clear. No matter what, I wasn't doing enough, and I always owed more. It got so familiar, that bitterness. Like a background noise, constant and low, but always there. I started to feel detached from it all, like I was watching some family drama from the outside, just going along because it was easier than being the guy who said no. But inside, that rage was there, quiet at first, then building. I resented how much I gave, resented how little they appreciated it. The worst part was, I never said this out loud. No one wanted to hear it. Or maybe I was scared what would happen if I did. The more I gave, the more they expected. I was the guy holding everything together, the safety net. But I was also the one they turned on when things fell apart. It was always my fault somehow. And I swallowed it, because I thought that's what family meant. But some families use love as currency. Mine preferred invoices. I kept hoping one day it'd balance out. That the guilt would turn into gratitude, the blame into understanding. But that day never came. Instead, I got tired, really tired. Not just physically, but every time I dropped $1 or lent my car or stayed late on a Friday night to help, a piece of me chipped away. It wasn't exhaustion I felt. It was something more like emptiness. Looking back, I realized maybe I wanted to be needed more than I wanted to be respected. Maybe I thought if I kept giving, eventually they'd see me. Really see me. But instead, I just became the bank, the handyman, the scapegoat. The guy who could be counted on, but never really counted. When things started falling apart for me, it hit me all at once. All those years of unpaid emotional debts, all the silence when I needed help. I began to see the pattern clearly, how I was used, how I got trapped in this role by my own hope that love didn't have to hurt this much. And that's when I knew I had to change something. Because I couldn't keep paying into an account that was always frozen. Whatever came next, I couldn't keep being the punchline in my own family's story. But walking away wasn't simple. I thought I was ready. I thought I could just shut the door and be done. Instead, the moment I started to pull back, I realized how deeply I was stuck, how much guilt was wired under my skin. Like, this wasn't just about money or favors anymore. It was like trying to quit a part of me that I wasn't sure existed without those endless debts. I stood there one night, just staring at the phone, knowing I'd have to call and say no. But that call felt like crossing a line, the kind you don't come back from. My voice caught in my throat, my hands shaking. I wanted to run away and forget it all, but something inside told me this was the test. If I was going to stop being the bank, I had to stop being the debtor too. As the line went dead, I waited for the fallout. But all that came was silence. Like the whole family was holding its breath. And I realized that silence wasn't relief. It was worse. I sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, staring at the screen where all those damn payments were lined up like ticking time bombs. The decorator's final balance, the after-party fireworks, the limousine service for the night after, all of it. All of it just money. Money I technically didn't know anymore. But more than that, it was proof. Proof they thought they could pull off this fiasco behind my back, that someone else would clean up their mess. I started with the decorator's invoice. The amount was hefty, but not outrageous. I hesitated for a moment, thinking about the work Beth and Sarah had put in, all for a party that wasn't even going to happen as planned. Then I closed the app and hit cancel payment. No warning, no calls, nothing. Just a silent swipe of my thumb and a message confirming the cancellation. Next was the fireworks, the over-the-top finale they insisted on. I didn't even like fireworks. I hated the noise. But canceling that was the easiest. No more loud explosions lighting up a night that was already going to be dark in so many ways. When the confirmation popped up, I felt a weird flicker inside me, like something shifting quietly but deliberately. The limousine was the last on the list. The whole company was booked for that night, the drivers already assigned. I imagined the confused calls they'd receive, the sudden cancellations scrambling their schedules. It was petty, I knew, but it felt less like revenge and more like setting things straight. Or maybe it was just a way to let some of the frustration breathe, to take back control where I could. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want confrontations or drama. Besides, I was pretty sure no one would notice until it was too late. The money was mostly Beth and Sarah's domain anyway. I was invisible in this, so I stayed that way, quiet, behind the scenes, unbothered. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd tried to blindside me, and yet here I was, subtly unraveling their plans without a word. Then, I thought about what would happen when the night came. No fireworks. No fancy ride. No finishing touches at the venue. I pictured the looks on their faces when the bills came back unpaid or the vendors called, irritated. I didn't need revenge. Just a refund, and maybe a lesson they'd actually remember. Still, a part of me wondered if this was enough. If quietly scrapping their payments would really make a difference. Or if it was just a small echo in a mess that was about to explode in ways I couldn't control. I felt that silent tension building, like the calm before a storm. I was waiting to see how they'd respond to the first ripple of fallout, and I knew it wasn't going to be pretty. I locked my phone and slipped it into my pocket, feeling numb but oddly satisfied. This was my small rebellion, my way of pushing back without yelling or begging. Nobody would guess it was me. And honestly, they probably thought I'd just sit quietly and take whatever happened. Maybe that was the most dangerous part, that underneath the silence, something was already breaking. As I stood up and glanced around the empty apartment, I realized I wasn't nervous yet. Not really. I was almost waiting for the moment everything would start to fall apart in front of them. The quiet cancellations were just the beginning. And somehow, that thought made the empty room feel heavier, like a secret I was carrying alone, and like the night was far from over. I thought it was over, but the silence that followed said otherwise. I remember booking that trip like it was the only sane thing left to do. I didn't plan it, didn't overthink it, just 2 clicks and a credit card number, and suddenly I was on my way to the Maldives. It felt reckless at first, like I was running away, but honestly, I didn't care. I needed out. Everything back home was just this endless noise of anger and disappointment. And I wanted silence. When that plane finally lifted off the runway, it hit me. This weird, sudden weightlessness, like I was shedding all the crap I'd been carrying for months. I was surprised at how light I felt, like maybe some part of me had been stuck in that dark mess so long I forgot what peace even looked like. The clouds outside the window didn't even matter. The seatbelt sign turned off, and for the first time in God knows how long, I didn't want to reach for my phone or check texts, or even brace myself for bad news. I sat back, breathing slow, trying not to imagine what I'd left behind. I knew I hadn't just left a place. I left all the screaming matches, the broken promises, the nights I cried alone in my room because everything felt like it was unraveling. It was like stepping into some other world, a world where no one was yelling, no one was accusing, no one was waiting to explode on me over something stupid. For a little while, it was just me and that hum of the plane's engines, and somehow that felt like a lifeline. The Maldives wasn't like the chaos I'd left. Nothing here tried to tear me down. The water was this endless stretch of blue that didn't care about my mistakes or my fears. When I finally stepped off the plane and felt the hot, thick island air on my skin, it hit me hard how far I'd come. I wasn't running. They say running doesn't solve anything, but now I think sometimes just putting distance between you and the bad parts is something. It's healing, maybe. That first night, there was quiet in a way I hadn't experienced in a long time. The hotel room smelled faintly of salt and flowers, and when I opened the sliding door to the patio, I could hear waves crashing gently. No fighting, no tension, no phone ringing with bad news. Just silence. I lay down on the balcony chair and stared up at stars I never bothered to see back home. It felt stupid to admit, but I almost cried. Not because I was sad, because I felt free. It didn't fix everything right away. I could still feel the edges of the anger lingering in me, like a bruise. I wasn't suddenly happy or okay, But for the first time since everything spiraled, I was alone in a place that didn't remind me of pain or mistakes. I could breathe without holding my chest tight. A part of me thought, maybe this trip is just a way to distract myself, to push the mess down deeper for a while. And yeah, that might be true. But at least I wasn't drowning anymore. I could decide who I wanted to be here, who I wanted to wake up as. I spent those days walking along endless beaches, swimming in the warm sea, feeling the sun burn my back. At night, I read books I didn't care about, drank cheap rum, and let the silence fill the spaces where my thoughts used to scream. It felt like I was slipping into someone else's life. Someone lighter, less tangled up in the past. But even in that calm, there was a sort of quiet ache. I could still feel the distance growing between me and everyone I left behind. Not just physical distance. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go back to that chaos anymore. Maybe I didn't even belong there now. One afternoon, I sat on the deck watching a storm roll in over the ocean. Dark clouds building quickly, lightning cutting across the sky. It was beautiful, terrifying, and unstoppable, kind of like what I left behind. I realized then I wasn't sure if I was running toward peace or just away from war, and maybe, deep down, those were the same thing. I thought I'd escaped for good, but that quiet moment before the storm hit said something else. It said this wasn't over. Not really. Not yet. My phone buzzed again. I glanced at it and saw my mom's name lighting up the screen. The decorator isn't answering. Did you confirm him? She texted. I didn't want to deal with it. So I flipped the phone face down on the kitchen counter and took a deep breath. The house smelled like burnt toast and coffee. The usual chaotic Sunday morning vibe when everyone's trying to get things done, but no one's really communicating. My sister was running around, testing out flower arrangements, while my dad sat somewhere watching the news, probably annoyed that breakfast was late. Messages kept coming in. Mom stressing over unpaid vendors, my aunt asking if the cake was going to show up on time, my cousin joking about whether anyone remembered to book the DJ. None of it felt urgent at first, just the usual jumbled wedding chaos. I tried to ignore it, telling myself someone else had it covered, but the knot in my stomach wouldn't loosen. I peeked at my phone again. Wedding planner says the florist called off last minute. What now? That text from Dad made me swallow hard. I didn't reply. I wanted to, but also didn't want to add more fuel to what felt like a slow-burning fire. Every message made the tension in the house thicker, like fog creeping under the door. I could hear Mom pacing upstairs, her footsteps quick, sharp. The TV played on low in the background, some old sitcom laugh track that couldn't drown out the growing worry. Somewhere in the shuffle, my little brother knocked over a box of invitations. They spilled on the floor, and instead of helping pick them up, I just watched. I wondered how we'd gotten here, the day before the wedding and everything still teetering on falling apart. I hated feeling useless, like the chaos was some storm I couldn't help calm. I tried to text back Mom again, just to tell her I'd look into the decorator, but the words caught in my throat, and I deleted the message before hitting send. What if I couldn't fix this? What if I made it worse? Then the power flickered. The lights dipped for a second, then back on. Everyone froze for a beat, and for a split second the house felt too quiet, like the storm was waiting before it hit. I rubbed my palms on my jeans, trying to steady myself. My sister called out from the living room, voice sharp but shaky. Did anyone pay the DJ? Because I just got a text saying he's asking for cash up front. No one answered right away. Silence stretched thin and brittle around us. I felt like I should jump in, do something. But I was frozen, like pulling on that loose thread might unravel everything. And maybe part of me didn't want to know what would come next. My mom's text popped up again. Can you call the decorator? Please. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the call button. I told myself I'd check in 5 minutes. 10 minutes later, same feeling. Caught between wanting to help and feeling too overwhelmed to even start. Out of nowhere, the dog barked loudly, breaking the tension for a second. Mom's footsteps stomped down the stairs, face tense. She's worried, my sister said quietly, eyes glued to her phone. I nodded but didn't say anything. Because even though everyone was scrambling, no one really knew what to do. The calm before it all fell apart. I thought maybe I could fix this. But the silence in the room, heavy and uncertain, told me something else. Like the wedding wasn't just about promises or flowers or music anymore. It was something fragile, hanging by a thread none of us knew how to hold. The waves were calm. Somewhere, 100 guests were not. I sat on the edge of the beach, toes digging into the cool sand, while behind me, The whole day was falling apart like a bad joke. It was supposed to be perfect. Me, in my dress, glowing with everything I thought I deserved. Him, late as hell. Not a save date or a second chance about to fix this. Just a slow-motion collapse in front of everyone. I could hear the shouts first, the catering team arguing in the distance, voices sharp like knives slicing through the gentle breeze. Someone had forgotten the food truck. The tables were half set with mismatched chairs and empty plastic water bottles instead of elegant glasses. And the flowers. Oh God, the flowers were nowhere to be found. No one had shown up with the decorations. I kept telling myself it'd get fixed, but I knew that was a lie. The sun dipped lower, shadows stretching across the sand. My phone buzzed again. The power was out. No music. No microphone for vows or speeches. Just the low thrum of frustration bubbling over, winding tighter with every passing minute. People started shouting, some angry, others confused. I caught snatches from what sounded like my mother, yelling about, "How could this happen? And this is a nightmare." But all I could think about was how silent he was. No texts, no calls, just radio silence. I hated how calm I felt as everyone else lost it. A gust of salty air whipped through the palm trees, and I pulled my shawl tighter around my shoulders. I watched a small group of guests nervously cluster, whispering, glancing toward the path where he was supposed to walk down. Toward me, toward the promise we'd made. Minutes ticked by slow enough to hear my heartbeat in my ears. Then someone came running down the path. It wasn't him. It was his best man, panting and red-faced, flapping his hands like the world was ending. He's stuck in traffic. Maybe an hour out. His voice cracked with strain. An hour. That's all I needed to know the day was done. Everything we'd planned, every detail, every hope, was unraveling in chaos. And I was just the calm center nobody wanted to face. I wanted to scream at the world. At him. At myself for holding on to this version of us. For pretending that the small cracks in his promises weren't already cracks deep enough to break everything. But instead, I just sat there, watching the ocean edges shimmer under the fading sun, letting the irony coat me like salt water. The guests began to scatter, frustrated and jabbering about refunds and rescheduling, their disappointment sharp and loud. The wedding planner, eyes wild and face pale, paced back and forth like a trapped animal. Someone checked her watch, then looked at me hesitantly, trying not to make eye contact, maybe hoping I'd say this wasn't my problem. I didn't say a word. I couldn't. What could I say? That he'd broken me? That I was glad? No, not glad. There was something worse simmering underneath the calm. The quiet satisfaction of finally seeing the facade fall. Like watching a glass I'd been clutching for years finally shatter against the floor. It was terrible, but I didn't feel bad for myself. Not exactly. More like a cold, vengeful relief. All those nights I spent hoping he'd change, all the excuses I made to keep building up this image of us. It was like watching a house on fire you helped light, knowing you could just stand back and watch it burn. I pulled out my phone and stared at the blank screen. No messages, no calls, just silence. The same silence I'd been trying to break for months, but never knew how. I didn't want to hear his reasons. I didn't want to hear anything. At that moment, a voice near me said something soft. "Hey, are you okay?" I looked up. It was one of the neighbors who'd come to watch the wedding from a distance. She was holding a small kid's hand, her eyes kind but curious. I forced a smile, shook my head a little. "Yeah," I said quietly, just taking it all in. She nodded, like she understood. Maybe she did. I turned back to the ocean, swallowed a bitter taste in my throat, and watched the waves roll in, steady, unbothered, endless. The wedding that was supposed to be the start of forever was already over. Only I hadn't even heard the worst yet. My phone started blowing up right after I hung up with her. I could see the screen light up, dozens of missed calls, texts flooding in from everyone. My parents, my brother, my closest friends. It was nonstop, but I just sat there, staring at it. And I didn't answer a single one. At first, I thought maybe I should pick up. Maybe I should say something. Anything. But then, I caught myself. Silence felt too good after all the noise. After all the lies and shouting. Each vibration against the wooden table felt like applause. Like every buzz was a little victory for me. The calls kept coming, one after another, and I just let them. I watched the screen fill up while I stayed perfectly still, like I was immune to the chaos outside this quiet bubble I made. Usually, I have this compulsive need to respond, to explain, to fix things, even if I know I'm in deep trouble. But this time was different. I didn't want to explain, didn't want to smooth anything over. I wanted them to feel the weight of how I'd been left cut off for so long. There was a strange kind of satisfaction in ignoring all those voices screaming my name, like they were finally on the other end of the line, desperate to break through, and I was the one holding the line closed. Each message was more desperate than the last, texts pleading for me to call back, voicemails I wasn't brave enough to play. I didn't even want to hear what they had to say, not yet. Not when every call just reminded me of all the ways things had fallen apart. At one point, my best friend left a message so frantic it almost made me laugh. "Please, man, just say you're okay. We're all worried sick." I heard that and felt a twist in my chest. Not for him, but for myself. Maybe I was the one who needed to be worried. But I didn't let it show. I didn't care if they were worried. Not tonight. I could almost hear their faces behind the calls, the fear and confusion, angrier than they'd let on. They didn't know what to believe anymore, and I guess they wanted me to fix that mess. But I wasn't going to be the one slamming the pieces back together. I'm tired of carrying that weight for everyone else, trying to mop up after their panic. Instead, I sat there, letting the phone buzz and hum against the rough wood, letting it fill the silence around me. My thumb instinctively hovered near the screen, but didn't touch. It was like my own way of saying, "Not yet. Not this time." There was a cold clarity in that moment. Like I finally realized how much I'd given away control over my own story, always answering, always explaining. But now, this was my scene, my silence. The calls couldn't demand anything if I didn't pick up. Around hour 3, the call list stopped growing. They'd run out of numbers, or maybe they'd realized I wasn't coming back that easily. I stared at my phone like it was some kind of trophy. It didn't feel like avoidance anymore. It felt like justice. A quiet reckoning where I finally had the upper hand without saying a word. By the time I put the phone face down, the weight in my chest had shifted. I wasn't scared or overwhelmed. I was resolved, coldly certain I wasn't rushing back into the storm just because they begged. Maybe I should have answered some of those calls. Maybe that silence hurt people more than I wanted to admit. But part of me needed to hear nothing at all. That night, the quiet felt alive around me. I thought it was peace. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. The silence had just begun. I sat on the edge of the couch, phone shaking slightly in my hand. The messages had been flooding in since yesterday, but I hadn't dared open any of them. There was this lump in my throat that refused to go away every time I thought about it, like I already knew what I'd find. But I couldn't look away anymore. My thumb hovered over the latest notification, then I tapped it, almost wishing it would just go away. It was a photo from the wedding. At first, I didn't take it in. I stared at the screen, trying to understand what I was seeing. The decorations, half of them missing. The tables looking bare and messy like someone had pulled everything down last minute. The flowers were wilted or gone completely. The arch where she was supposed to walk through was empty. The guests were clustered in small groups, some with angry faces, some with arms crossed like they were trying to stay calm, but didn't really care anymore. And then there was the livestream screenshot. The screen was frozen, that awful, glitchy blue-gray frozen stare you get when a connection cuts out. No one was watching. I didn't smile. Not out of guilt, just exhaustion. I felt like the air was knocked right out of me. I kept staring at the photo, over and over, hoping for something, some sense, some excuse, anything to tell me this wasn't happening or that someone would fix it. But it was real. All of it. The weirdest thing was the cold satisfaction rolling through me first, rising up slowly but impossibly clear. I wasn't proud or happy, no? Just something quieter, darker. Like, finally, the truth was out where everyone could see it. The perfect image they had tried to throw at everyone, disguised with smiles and happy words, just shattered like cheap glass. My hands clenched a little around the phone. It was like the photo was a punch to the gut, but also a weird kind of proof. Proof that I hadn't been crazy to feel the way I did, that the cracks were always there, even if I'd tried to ignore them. Then there was this moment of vindication. Not like I wanted anyone to be hurt, but it felt like maybe all the quiet fear and frustration I'd been carrying buried in my chest was suddenly breathing, alive. Like watching the wedding, the event everyone expected to be flawless, fall apart in real time. It confirmed everything I'd suspected from the beginning. They had hidden this side of their lives so well, but it couldn't stay hidden forever. I felt everything crashing down around me, but underneath that was this quiet, sinking sadness. It wasn't just about humiliation or failure. It was about what could have been, what they'd been hoping for. and how that hope seemed to crumble in the dust of the mess. In the photo, you could see the disappointment on the guests' faces. You could feel it too. It was like a gathering for joy had turned into a reminder that none of it was as perfect as they wanted the world to believe. I leaned back against the couch, closing my eyes for a second, the phone still clutched in my hand. It was strange how relief mixed with shame. Part of me wanted to keep looking away, pretend I hadn't just witnessed this. But the truth had this ugly beauty to it, raw and impossible to ignore. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew I couldn't pretend it didn't matter anymore. This wasn't just some bad day. It felt more like everything changing, collapsing, really, all at once. I opened my eyes and glanced at the photo one last time before locking the screen. The silence in the room was thick. It wasn't just the wedding that had fallen apart. It felt like something inside me did too. I thought it was over. But the silence that followed said otherwise. 2 days later, I was scrolling through my phone, mostly ignoring the notifications, when I saw her name pop up. It was my sister. I hadn't expected a message from her so soon, not after everything that happened. I hesitated before clicking it. She started with a simple "hey," which felt strangely normal. Then came the apology. Not the kind you say out of obligation, but something real, honest. She admitted she'd been blind, caught in the same snare I was, thinking I'd just walked away because I wanted to. They said it was your choice not to come, she wrote. I finally laughed. It was that absurd, the way they had spun everything like it was my fault. She told me she'd been alone with mom and dad after I left, and the way they talked to her was different, more careful, like they were hiding something. She said they'd told her things about me that weren't true, trying to pit us against each other. But she saw through it now. She said she felt awful for believing them. For a moment, I felt this flicker of relief, but it was tangled up in all the other messed up feelings. We started talking more that night, texting back and forth like nothing had happened. She told me about the cracks she'd started noticing, the way mom's smile never quite reached her eyes, how dad would get tense whenever I was mentioned. It was like she was peeling back layers I never wanted to touch. Part of me hated that she had to see it for herself, and part of me wished she'd done it sooner. She said she missed me, and I told her I missed her too. But there was this awkwardness hanging between us, like we were both scared to jump in too deep. She asked if I wanted to meet up, just somewhere neutral, no pressure. I didn't know what to say at first. I wanted to believe this was a fresh start, but I also knew scars don't heal that fast. I told her I'd think about it. Even writing that made my chest tight, because what if it ended up the same way? What if we were just two people trying to salvage something that got broken in a way we couldn't fix? Before she logged off that night, she said, maybe we were both just pawns to them. But maybe, this is our chance to stop playing their game. I stared at my phone long after she stopped typing. For once, it didn't feel like a trap. The next morning, I found myself staring at the ceiling, the message thread still open. I realized I'd been holding on to so much anger for so long. Maybe because I thought it gave me control. But her words cut through that. Maybe we weren't just victims. Maybe there was a way out. Or at least a way forward. Then, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a picture she sent. Us from years ago, smiling at some family gathering I barely remembered. It hit me harder than I expected. We'd had something once. I didn't know if it was worth fighting for, but the thought of walking away silently felt lonelier than ever. I typed back, yeah, maybe it is. And just like that, the silence that had been suffocating between us started to crack. But I could still feel the weight of everything left unsaid. I closed the message and stared out the window, wondering if this was the first step toward healing, or just another detour in a mess that still felt too big to fix. I used to think family was some unbreakable bond. You know, the kind of thing where no matter what happened, you stuck together because blood made it sacred. But I've learned it's nothing like that. Family isn't who you pay for or who's there when it's convenient. It's who shows up without asking. After all the chaos, I finally had time to sit with those ugly feelings. Not the anger or the betrayal that burned like acid, but the quiet, uncomfortable truth underneath. I realized I wasted years chasing approval from people who never really cared. It cost me more than money or pride. It cost my peace. And peace? It's cheaper than approval. You just have to want it. I remember one night, sitting alone in my apartment, everything still quiet except for the buzz of the streetlights outside. My phone lit up with a message from someone I thought was family. I stared at it for what felt like forever, my thumb hovering. It was the usual empty apology, the kind you send when you owe more than words can fix. I didn't reply. Instead, I locked my phone and looked around the room, really looked. No one was coming to fix this for me. No one owed me anything. That's when something inside me clicked. The way I'd been trying to buy their love with gifts or favors or sticking my neck out, because that's what family does. It was just me fooling myself. I was the one holding the strings, convincing myself their approval mattered more than my own sanity. And I was too worn out to play that game anymore. I started setting boundaries without guilt. It was terrifying at first, turning people down, saying no to calls that drained me, walking away from conversations that spiraled into blame and old wounds. But with every no, the weight on my chest got lighter. It wasn't just about protecting myself. It was about redefining what family meant for me. I found it in the people who didn't need reminders. The ones who checked in without expectation, who didn't sugarcoat or twist words to serve their own needs. It's funny, those people weren't the ones with my last name. They were the friends who became family by choice, not by default. There's also this quiet kind of freedom that comes when you stop apologizing for wanting peace. I used to think it made me selfish. But now, I see it's the most honest thing I could do. You can love someone from a distance if that's the only way to keep your soul intact. I'm not saying it's easy. The silence from those who used to call me family still stings. No lie. It's a hollow ache sometimes, sitting right beneath everything else. But I've stopped trying to fill it with false hope or desperate calls. Instead, I fill it with the knowledge that peace doesn't mean giving up on love. It means choosing where love is real. Sometimes I catch myself looking back, wondering if I should have fought harder or held on tighter. But then I remind myself, fighting for someone who won't fight beside you just keeps you stuck. Liberation, real liberation, is letting go of who you thought they should be and accepting who they are. I think about the money, the time, and the heartbreak I poured into this whole family thing. It adds up to one brutal lesson learned. But maybe that's what made the peace so sweet. The hard cost made me serious about what I truly deserve. Now, when I hear the word family, it no longer has a single meaning chained to my past. It's a living thing, something I nurture with the people who show up, not the ones who send empty texts or fade away when I need them most. I'm calmer now. There's wisdom in not needing anyone's permission to protect my own heart, in not waiting for others to decide if I'm worthy. Family is messy, imperfect, and complicated, but it doesn't have to be painful. And honestly, I'm still figuring it out. But for the first time, I'm choosing peace over the chaos of trying to fix things that were never mine to fix. The silence after that last message, it felt like an ending. But really, it was the beginning of me showing up for myself in a way I never had before.